With so many DPS options in ZenlessZoneZero, it can be hard to decide who to pick for your teams. And with new characters like Seed and Orpheus on the horizon, team building especially can get confusing. Worry not, however, as in today's video, we'll break down every single DPS character, from top tier choices like Miyabi to the often overlooked characters like Billy. With this, we'll be exploring their best team compositions, and as always, if you found today's video helpful or learned something new, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Let's be honest, guys, using the internet these days doesn't really feel free or private anymore. Between sites blocking certain shows depending on where you live, random sketchy public Wi-Fi spots, and all the tracking that goes on in the background, it's kind of a mess. That's where the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN, comes in. It's an easy way to protect yourself online while also unlocking a lot of stuff you normally can't access. One of my favorite parts about Surfshark is how it lets you watch shows and movies that are normally blocked in your country. To be clear though, this isn't just about Netflix, as this works with tons of different streaming services, so you can actually watch what you want wherever you want. On top of this, it keeps you safe while you're using public Wi-Fi, and if you're curious about those free connections at cafes or airports, they're basically open doors for hackers. With Surfshark, your connection is fully encrypted, meaning nobody can see what you're doing or steal your info while you're online. The best part here, however, is that you only need one account for unlimited devices, and this means that your phone, laptop, tablet, and even your smart TV all gets covered under the same plan. Surfshark also has extra features like Surfshark Alert, which notifies you instantly if any of your personal info ever leaks online, so you can instantly know how or when to fix the problem before it gets worse. So what are you waiting for? If you want to unlock shows from around the world, stay safe on public Wi-Fi, and protect all your devices with just one account, definitely check out Surfshark VPN. As a side note, you don't even necessarily have to worry about trying it, as they even have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so really, there is just zero risk. Just press the link in the description down below, or click on the one on screen right now to start browsing with actual freedom today. As a final note, go to surfshark.com/Kana or use code Kana at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back into it. Before we cover each character's team, I'd like to include a quick disclaimer, and that's the fact that some numbers from today's video will come from Pridewind's Deadly Assault and Shiyu Defense analytics. Now, these list off average and top performing scores/clears for each respective endgame mode, and now while this is a useful reference for popularity and performance of teams at times, it's not a flawless definitive measure of a team's full potential. Instead, we'll be using this as a tool for reference purposes, and I'll also include the link to this in the description if you'd like to explore it for yourself. Now, to add to this, the video that you'll be watching today is not a complete breakdown of every single team, but rather ones that you can use and ones that have found great success, especially in Deadly Assault and most endgame modes. And as a result, although I will be including brief summaries of each character and their team, feel free to reference my other teams' videos or past guides if you're curious about their playstyle or what to expect from said lineups. Now let's begin with Evelyn. Evelyn's best team by far is Evelyn Lighter Astra, and this team ranks as one of the top choices in Deadly Assault. In terms of playstyle, this Evelyn setup is very straightforward to execute, especially when used with Astra Yao, and Astra essentially comes onto field to begin buffing the entire team, and once completed, she then allows Evelyn and Lighter to both use quick assists consistently throughout the fight. Evelyn can also use chain attacks multiple times with Astra, and Lighter applies buffs, stuns the enemy, and debuffs them, all while synergizing and increasing Evelyn's DPS significantly. The Deadly Assault boss that you would use this team in are mostly any fire weak bosses, such as either variation of the Poppy bosses. And now interestingly, another boss that Evelyn is actually good at fighting is Typhon, even though they are actually technically fire resistant. This is because of the buff that's attached to Typhon, and also because of his defensive assist mechanic, which both make dazing and dealing high DPS to this boss that much easier. Now on average though, Evelyn Lighter Astra performed about 19% better in Deadly Assault compared to other Evelyn teams, and this of course is thanks to both Lighter's buffs and the way that Lighter's unique resource and Astra's quick assists work for Evelyn. For ZenlessZoneZero Anby, her optimal team is definitely Anby Trigger Astra, and Astra's buffs and ability to quick assist often makes ZenlessZoneZero Anby quite strong. Alongside this, Trigger as one of the best stun characters also adds significant value to the team, as she is a dazer who doesn't need to stay on field for too much time at all. However, the team listed here is on average 8 to 12% better than any other Anby team, and for ZenlessZoneZero Anby specifically, her best Deadly Assault boss is Unknown Corruption Complex, aka UCC, and Typhon, as both have electric weakness, and also because of the crit damage/damage percent buffs that each boss provides when playing to their mechanic. Now let's talk about Hugo. Fortunately for Hugo Lycon shippers, Hugo's best team is lore accurate and includes Hugo Lighter Lycon, and Lighter applies buffs and debuffs for ice damage based agents while also lengthening the stun duration of enemies, which directly increases how much damage Hugo's totalized deals. Now to add to this, Lycon's stun multiplier increase buffs and ice buffing kit pairs perfectly with Hugo's goal in most fights, and with this, the two are by far the best partners for Hugo when pairing him with stunners. To compare this team with other Hugo teams though, this lineup had roughly a 23% higher score on average, and Hugo's best Deadly Assault boss matchups were a Marionette and the normal Butcher, as both provide you extra crit damage. Now while most characters perform fine against Marionette, Hugo specifically can struggle due to the boss's high mobility and his own tendency to be locked in animations. That said, although Hugo's best bosses are much easier to beat or haven't shown up in a while, he is still pretty easy to play against most bosses and does perform decently, assuming you do at least have lighter. Zhu Yuan's best team hasn't really changed since Trigger's release, and in most cases her best team is a toss-up between something like Zhu Yuan Trigger Nicole, Zhu Yuan Qingyi Nicole, and Zhu Yuan Nicole Astra. This is because Zhu Yuan's playstyle and performance is mostly dependent on the boss that she fights against, and as always, supports like Nicole and Astra provide decent damage increasing buffs or debuffs. On the other hand, Trigger and Qingyi also are designed to help Zhu Yuan's team enter the stun phase, but this is more specifically so that Zhu Yuan can take advantage of her additional ability. To no one's surprise though, the best Zhu Yuan teams perform around 25% better than other lineups on average, and because Zhu Yuan is an ether attribute character, her best Deadly Assault boss is UCC, followed by Marionette. However, in some cases, she can even be used in Miasmic Fiend, though she definitely does struggle in that fight. Now for Ellen's best team, she performs best with Lighter and Astra as her teammates, and this is because Ellen needs a lot of time on field to perform her combo, and this plus the added quick assist spam from Astra alongside the ice related buffing from Lighter makes the trio an incredibly strong team, especially when used post Ellen buff. As a side note though, the EX special usage from Ellen also synergizes well with Lighter, which contributes towards building his unique resource as well. Compared to other Ellen teams though, this lineup performed 14% better, but Ellen's best Deadly Assault matchups are actually normal Butcher followed by Marionette. Now though these bosses are strong for Hugo as well, it's actually been quite a while since regular Butcher has appeared on rotation. Harumasa's best team includes a combination of Trigger, Astra, Qingyi, and Nicole, and similar to Zhu Yuan where the team is more dependent on the boss or the buff that is available, Harumasa has a few teams that end up performing best for him alone, with Trigger applying stuns from off-field, Nicole shredding enemy defenses, Astra buffing Haru's base stats, and Qingyi being an easier, more direct way of stunning. The various lineups all performed roughly 15 to 25% higher in terms of score when used specifically in Deadly Assault. Now Harumasa works decently as a DPS because he has solid burst, and if you end up mastering his combos while fitting everything under a single stun window, his damage output can definitely increase even further. Now for Harumasa's best Deadly Assault matchups however, he definitely excels against UCC and Typhon similar to Soldier Zero Anby, and this is because of their electric type weakness and because of the crit damage buff that they inevitably receive. For Soldier 11, as always, Lighter and Astra are her best partners, as Lighter not only provides ice buffs, but also great fire damage bonuses too. To add to this, Astra's off-field buffs allow Soldier 11 to be on field as much as possible, and Soldier herself is actually pretty great for those looking for a decently simple playstyle. That said, if we pair Soldier with Lighter and Astra, these teams perform roughly 23% better on average compared to teams without them, and since Soldier 11 is a fire attribute character, her best boss matchups are either of the Pompey variations, which are honestly pretty difficult to deal with, especially if you don't have access to Evelyn. Now I do want to include a couple disclaimers here before I get to the physical attack characters, and to start, although Fiend is weak to physical, the performance of most physical attack agents is much lower than you'd expect. This is because of the Fiend's weakness specifically towards anomalies, and to summarize, when the Miasmic Fiend is hit with an attribute anomaly, it's dealt extra anomaly damage from agents, stacking up to 6 times for a maximum of 48% bonus damage. To add to this, if you're able to activate its Miasmic Shield, this will clear all stacks. Now each cleared stack here will increase the shield's damage reduction efficiency by 2.5% up to 15% at full stacks, and to TLDR this, you will deal more damage if you apply Anomaly, which is also why physical anomalies like Jane and Alice have performed amazingly against this boss specifically. Nekomata's best team, however, is Nekomata Nicole Astra, and this team is great for her as she likes to be on the field to spam her abilities, while both Nicole and Astra don't necessarily need to be on field as often to apply their abilities. That said, Nekomata has definitely felt stronger at times compared to other characters, especially when accounting for some of the clunkier issues that she has in her kit regarding gameplay and feel, but comparatively though, this Nekomata lineup as opposed to others actually performed roughly 33% better, which is decent for those looking for a Neko specific team. As a physical character though, you might imagine that Nekomata would perform best in Miasmic Fiend, but as we mentioned earlier, since the boss is more skewed toward physical anomaly agents, this ends up being a decent but not actually that amazing fight for her. Instead, fighting against other bosses like the Marionettes is actually more consistent and higher performing, but to add to this, even a boss like UCC is also able to be dazed, stunned, and broken easier than with Miasmic Fiend, which does actually make it a decent alternative to Fiend or most other DA bosses where you'd otherwise struggle to do so. Now, on the topic of physical attackers, however, Billy's best team is Billy, Nicole, Astra, or a variation of the two supports alongside Yuzuha. Now, because Billy needs either a cunning hair ally or someone who is physical, he actually has very few options for his teams. Because of this, Yuzuha and Nicole especially stand out as his best partners, and with this, any Yuzuha, Nicole, Astra team actually ends up performing better by about 26%. Now, regarding Billy's best boss choice though, he is strongest when fighting against Marionette, as this boss is much easier to stun and fight compared to most enemies, but because Billy can sometimes generate a decent amount of physical anomaly even as an attacker, he also actually performed decently well against Miasmic Fiend, all things considered. Now, Corin's best teammates are Nicole, Yuzuha, and Astra, much like Billy, and while all physical attackers in this case have limited team options, it is worth mentioning that using the specific pairing of Nicole and Astra, or some combo including Yuzuha, will definitely still create solid success, especially in Deadly Assault. In fact, this disorder and quick assist spam actually outperformed most other Corin teams by at least 10 to 15%, and with this setup, she can actually clear Marionette and Miasmic Fiend with scores well over 20,000, similar to Billy and Nekomata. Now, regarding bosses specifically, Marionette, as mentioned previously, is still a standout fight for her, and she can also handle the Miasmic Fiend decently well, thanks to her solid anomaly application when using her EX special, and also because of her element advantage, especially when paired with Yuzuha. Let's talk about Anton next. Anton's best team is similar to other 4-stars like Billy and Corin, where his best teammates are actually Nicole and, you guessed it, Astra. Now, both slot well with Anton because of their off-field nature, allowing Anton to make the most of his DPS. But that said, this team lineup of Anton, Nicole, Astra is particularly silly, however is still well performing at times, as it allows him to infinitely spam his drill attack over and over. Despite this, there are some lineups with Anton where he can shine, especially when using a stunner-like trigger instead of Nicole or Astra. However, for bosses, Anton's best matchups are against UCC and Typhon for the same reason as ZenlessZoneZero Anby and Harumasa. They're element advantageous, and of course they can make use of the crit damage buffs. Now, as we move to anomaly agents, I do also have a small disclaimer, as a lot of the anomaly agents will actually have overlap due to most of their additional abilities or kits requiring another anomaly agent to bring out the most in them. To add to this, recent boss releases have also specifically included anomaly focused buffs, and as a result, most bosses can actually have at least one anomaly agent used against them, as the buffs are pretty generic and anomaly as a whole is pretty strong. Let's start by talking about Miyabi though. Clearly, Miyabi is the best DPS in the game and therefore has many options for her personal best team. However, her most consistent and high performing team thus far is Miyabi, Sokaku, Yuzuha, if you're willing to learn mono ice and use manual chain attacks. Otherwise, suffering slightly in score or using something like Miyabi, Yanagi, Yuzuha will also work as well, and this is because Miyabi is great in general, as a lot of the bosses in Deadly Assault are weak to ice, like Butcher. Now, it is still worth mentioning, however, that Miyabi does struggle in the Miasmic Priest fight specifically, as this boss cannot be frozen, it has a 40% reduction to all anomaly buildup, and it also has an additional 20% extra resistance to ice, totaling up to a 40% ice resistance, something that we've never seen before. Now, this fight, of course, is obviously designed to counter Miyabi specifically, but in general, if we compare Miyabi's best team, even with other Miyabi teams, she still performs roughly 11 to 13% better if you end up pairing her with Sokaku, Yuzuha, Yanagi, or Vivian as her teammates. Alice is the newest release for anomaly agents, and her performance is also pretty impressive for the current Deadly Assault. Now, of course, the bosses are currently more skewed in her favor, with the anomaly buff specifically benefiting physical agents, but even despite this bias, Alice's best team is still Alice, Vivian, Yuzuha, with a swap between Vivian or Yanagi depending on the boss and their weakness. Now, Alice also has many clear strengths with her damage, her ability to apply physical anomaly, and also her mobility, but it is worth noting that her ability to synergize with characters like Jane, Miyabi, and any other physical agent is very promising. In Deadly Assault though, any team including Yanagi, Vivian, Yuzuha outperformed any Alice team that didn't have said characters by about 15 to 20%. However, for bosses, Alice's best matchup is definitely Miasmic Fiend and UCC, as one is designed with her entire kit in mind, and the other is able to be dazed and staggered more easily when breaking its legs. Now, despite this, it is worth noting that she does perform fine in Marionette and other anomaly focused bosses, but these were just the ones that were noteworthy for her specifically. For Jane, her best team bounces between Jane Vivian or Jane Yanagi plus Yuzuha, and now to be clear, Jane is great as a DPS because of her incredible mobility and her ability to apply anomaly quickly, but what's also interesting about Jane, however, is that she can additionally make assaults crit, allowing for very creative teams. However, this unfortunately actually isn't the basis for her best teams, and instead, some of her best teams include direct anomaly buffers like Vivian and Yuzuha. To be clear, Vivian especially increases Jane's potential damage by a significant amount, and when a variation of all four characters are paired together, these teams perform 25% 20% better on average. As a quick disclaimer though, Jane is notably worse than Alice, so keep that in mind, but as I'm sure you've seen with most Jane clears, this does not mean that Jane is weak or that she's incapable of clearing current endgame content. In regard to her best Deadly Assault boss matchups, however, Jane is similar to Alice in that she is good against UCC or the Miasmic Fiend, and can technically be used against Pompey or any boss if you lack characters, as her overall DPS is solid enough to deal with most bosses, and honestly, a lot of the bosses do have Anomaly specific buffs. Now, to no one's surprise, Miyabi, Vivian, Yuzuha is Vivian's best team, and this is because of Yuzuha's insane Anomaly buffs, alongside Miyabi being the most broken DPS. Now, with just these two factors alone, Vivian is already able to bring out the best of her abilities, given her scaling with Anomaly damage. That said, replacing Miyabi with characters like Yanagi and Alice have also shown to be respectable in terms of results, but on average, when comparing most teams to Miyabi, Vivian, Yuzuha, this team had an average of an 11 to 13% increase in score for Deadly Assault. Now for Vivian herself, she is specifically great against bosses like UCC, Notorious Dead End Butcher, and even the Marionettes, but as I mentioned earlier with Zhu Yuan, because there aren't that many bosses that are weak to Ether, and because Disorder is so strong, Vivian can pretty much work with any Anomaly-based team, and her kit also synergizes with most Anomaly agents. So overall, she's a solid pick in virtually any team composition, though I will admit that if you have to swap to her, her basic attack can sometimes feel lacking, and periods where she doesn't have energy do actually feel lacking compared to other characters like Yanagi. On the topic of Yanagi, her best team is Yanagi, Miyabi, Yuzuha, and Yanagi herself is already a great DPS because she can trigger Disorder on demand, regardless of Anomaly buildup in the right conditions. With excellent burst damage and sustained Anomaly application, Yanagi excels as a main field and technically sub-field unit, particularly in Disorder teams. On top of this, she increases her own team's Disorder damage multipliers, further enhancing her effectiveness, but to add to all this, she also pairs perfectly with certain characters' kits. As with someone like Miyabi, Yanagi definitely provides benefit to her kit, as the added Disorder procs also add to Miyabi's Fallen Frost points. If we had to compare this lineup to other Yanagi teams though, Yanagi, Miyabi, Yuzuha does actually perform 19 to 21% better on average, but in certain lineups or when fighting against bosses that aren't weak to ice like UCC, a mono electric lineup is actually very competitive to Miyabi and can actually perform equal to, if not better than, this specific lineup. With this, however, Yanagi is best against UCC, Typhon, and Butcher thanks to the crit damage effect that you get here. Now, even though Yanagi is an electric character, because she buffs Disorder and Anomalies in general, she can also be used in any bosses because of her powerful synergy with characters like Miyabi or even Alice. This is actually the same case for Burnice though, which we'll get into right now. Burnice's best team is Miyabi, Burnice, Yuzuha, and this team was definitely solid due to the constant Disorder that it could generate. Burnice herself is very easy to play as well and integrates smoothly into a variety of team compositions, but Yuzuha on the other hand provides insane buffs as previously mentioned to Anomaly units, making her a great fit for pretty much any Anomaly based teams too. Generally speaking though, replacing Miyabi with another unit results in about a 14 to 25% decrease in overall performance depending on which fight you choose. However, for Deadly Assault, you might believe that Burnice is only good for Pompey, as Pompey is fire weak, but she's actually also decent against any bosses that just aren't fire resistant, so long as you take a character like Yanagi, Jane, Miyabi, or Alice. That said, Burnice performed best when content had lower health or was shorter form, and with this, content like Shiyu Defense can actually favor Burnice more often. Grace is another great free-to-play Anomaly DPS, with her special and EX special building Electric Anomaly, but for Grace's best team though, this would actually be Miyabi, Grace, Yuzuha. However, in this team specifically, Grace's role falls more in line with a sub DPS to Miyabi, and if Miyabi for whatever reason wasn't in this team, Grace's lineup does actually perform significantly worse, with a near 23 to 34% gap in results. However, in terms of matchups, Grace is actually pretty decent at fighting UCC for Deadly Assault, but if you're wondering why I didn't include Typhon here, it's not to say that she can't be used against it, but rather since Typhon is definitely more defensive assist / stun oriented, Grace can definitely struggle more than if you'd use her in UCC. Now to add to this, she can also be used for both Marionettes and Butcher when paired with Miyabi, and this is because she provides value through her on-field Anomaly application to help maintain pressure even when swapping off-field with Miyabi. Now Piper is the last Anomaly unit that we'll be talking about for today, and her best team is Piper, Vivian, Yuzuha. Now Piper by herself is a decent DPS with her fast Anomaly application through spinning and solid assault damage. However, compared to other Piper teams, Piper, Vivian, Yuzuha performs 18% better on average, but as we talk about Piper for Deadly Assault, she is definitely great for Fiend and most fights where bosses are weak to Anomaly. That said, it is also worth mentioning that she is kind of carried by her team, as both Yuzuha and Vivian as her best team are definitely top tier Anomaly supports. Now notably, Piper does also feel worse than Jane for Marionettes, as the bosses teleport around, and Jane is better suited for that content specifically with her improved improved mobility. Now, Xuan is the last character and also the only current Rupture agent that we have access to. Now, while she is obviously clearly designed to counter the Miasma Priest with her penetrating miasma-related abilities, she does also shine in other content. In terms of best performing team, however, Xuan has access to Xuan Jufufu Astra, Xuan Jufufu Pan, and even Xuan Jufufu Trigger depending on the fight. Now, comparing these three teams to most others, the teams outperform by a minimum of 10 but scaling up to 24 or even 26% over the opposing lineups. But moving to the topic of specific bosses that she's strong against, it's clear that Xuan was designed to beat the Miasma Priest. However, as I just teased earlier, Xuan is still also great against most bosses because there really aren't any ether resistant targets in Deadly Assault, at least at the time of this recording. However, it is worth mentioning that she does struggle considerably when fighting against the Miasmic Fiend, but in general, bosses whose effect gives crit damage or attack is where Xuan is suited best, and with this, bosses like Marionette or UCC can be great matchups for Xuan if you're looking to clear more comfortably. Now let's talk about Shiyu Defense. While Deadly Assault tends to draw more attention due to its overall higher difficulty, Shiyu Defense still holds relevance as an endgame mode. The challenge, however, with this lies in giving advice for it. Many bosses like Doppelganger Jane or dual boss fights have unique mechanics that make universal advice tricky. Now, as it was also teased earlier, Shiyu Defense changes often, and the buff associated with each rotation also influences the agent or character that you'll want to see in the week's lineup. For this week specifically, this means that characters like Xuan will do amazingly, and that's because the second half of Shiyu Defense is both ether weak and also provides a sheer plus crit damage bonus. Similarly, the anomaly damage bonus from this effect also incentivizes Alice and Jane to be used during this rotation, as the Heretic Joker is also weak to physical. Despite all this though, characters like Burnice, Miyabi, Zhu Yuan, Evelyn, and more burst-oriented kits are definitely more usable in Shiyu Defense, and this is because a single combo against a stunned enemy can sometimes end the fight in a Shiyu Defense encounter. This is also the reason why characters like Qingyi can often find more success in Shiyu as opposed to Deadly Assault, but these are just mild recommendations as the actual best team is again more dependent on the week's buffs. Now, all in all, there are a lot of choices out there for DPS with a variety of different situations where certain DPS are better than others. Before we conclude today's video though, I'd like to include a final disclaimer that many of the supports or utility characters listed in today's video can be substituted or replaced with non-limited supports like Lucy, Pulchra, or even Nicole. But even if we're accounting for other limited characters, of course, there are certain fights where a team like Xuan, Qingyi, and Jufufu may actually end up being way better than some of the other Xuan teams. With this though, although many of the listed teams from today were definitely some of the best teams and matchups that you can take into the end game of ZenlessZoneZero, there are infinite more possibilities or variations that will also lead to great success. Thank you again for watching today's video though. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, good night.